Warringah.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I ask leave of the House to move amendments 1 to 18 as circulated in my name.
Is leave granted? The Assistant Minister.
Yes, leave is granted.
Leave is granted. The member for Warringah may proceed.
I move amendments 1 to 18 as circulated in my name. These amendments, along with many that have been put forward by the crossbench, are seeking to improve this legislation. Earlier this week, I spoke on the Net Zero Economy Authority Bill 2024, and today these amendments are trying to address the issues that there are with that bill. As the bill currently stands, it has a narrow and hyper-targeted scope that fails to provide the authorities with what is necessary to generally support genuinely a net zero economy transition. This bill restricts the type of employer or worker that is afforded that just transition support under the Act, specifically limited only to those transitioning from coal and gas-fired power stations. In stark contrast to the broad objects of this bill, the operating provisions for worker transition are incredibly limited. And time again, members from government and from Labor came into this place talking about no worker left behind. With respect, that is simply not true. The title of this bill is a shameless attempt at greenwashing the effect of this bill. For all the rhetoric on leaving no one behind in the transition or framing this bill as a net zero economy authority, the government is leaving many workers and industries behind, and regions, as a member for Indi has pointed out through her amendments. It's limited to helping approximately 5,000 workers, ignoring at least 110,000 others from export coal, oil and gas industries, and ignoring a further 100,000 plus workers if we consider the mechanics, gas fitters and other geographically dispersed but emissions-intensive industries that will be subject to transition and who could also be supported by this authority. Even members of the government, like the member for Newcastle, identified that the bill will neglect almost 90% of coal mine workers in the Hunter. The Hunter Jobs Alliance highlights that in that region alone, an additional 2,600 workers between now and 2030 will be affected by coal mine closures, yet they do not get the benefit of a jobs plan or the real powers in this bill for the authority. The bill should be broadened to include workers who are part of emission-intensive industries. Examples include gas networks or gas supply manufacturing businesses, mechanics of fossil fuel-powered vehicles. Or, at the very least, the bill should include a mechanism to broaden the scope and powers of the authority to more workers. It's not only for workers that this bill is too narrow. The bill currently outlines a net zero economy authority with wide overarching objectives. But what is critical is that these functions are not just aspirational, but that they are actually achievable and actually have teeth or powers associated. It's crucial that the authority is mandated to proactively plan, coordinate and advise on the phase-out of fossil fuels, including their exploration, extraction and export, as well as for export as well as domestic use, something the government seems to remain in denial about. It will acknowledge the closure of fossil fuel energy plants, but it will not acknowledge the likely and very real closure of fossil fuel export industries. Independence is also an essential to achieve the goals and for the public to have confidence in how we transform our economy. And so the independent body and the board of this new authority must be independent and made up of people with the right mix of expertise and experience. And in that respect, I note a number of amendments that have been made by members of the crossbench, again seeking to improve this legislation, but that have not been taken up by the government. At the moment, ironically and quite extraordinarily, this bill doesn't require a board member to have climate or engineering experience, and yet it is a body that is said to be delivering a net zero economy authority. And so, without even having that kind of experience, it's just hard to imagine that this board will in fact be fit for purpose to meet the very broad and aspirational challenge that is set. So I would ask the government to rethink the approach, and it needs to consider amendments that will enhance recruitment of board members, ensure their independence and avoid captain's picks. Finally, we still have an issue that there is good greenwashing in the title of this bill by calling it the Net Zero Economy Authority. Ironically, net zero is still not defined, and I've had discussions with the Assistant Minister in this respect. The difficulty we have is that there's a lot of other industries that come into play, in particular carbon capture and storage. And so it is important to start defining net zero to ensure we don't have industries that are not really the purview of this authority.
The question is the amendments moved by the honourable member for Warringah be agreed to, and I'll give the call to the Assistant Minister.
Thank you, Speaker. I'd just start by noting to the member for Warringah that provisions in the bill as it stands in front of us right now is that the Net Zero Economy Authority will be able to create advisory boards where the board sees fit for further advice on a range of things that have been mentioned in her contribution just now. When it comes to changes to the principles and adding additional principles to the bill, we do believe that the objects of the Act are clearly articulated in Clause 3, including promoting an orderly and positive economic transformation, facilitating the achievement of Australia's greenhouse gas emissions reduction targets, and ensuring Australians, regions and workers are supported and benefit from the transition. We believe that's very clearly outlined in the bill as it stands. With regards to the definition of net zero, we do not support this amendment. The bill currently refers to Australia's greenhouse gas emissions reduction targets and our obligations under the Paris Agreement. The Paris Agreement sets a long-term goal of achieving a balance between, quote, emissions by sources and sinks of greenhouse gases in the second half of this century. This is an established and widely accepted characterisation of net zero, and the one that indeed has been accepted in other bills that have been passed through this House and voted on and voted for by those in the government and from the crossbench. We do believe that it would make unnecessary confusion if it was to be interpreted in a different way to existing Commonwealth Acts, and so we do not support that change. With regards to the scope of worker supports, I will note under Clause 16C, the authority will have a broad function to support workers in emissions-intensive industries who are or will be affected by Australia's transition to net zero emissions economy. The Energy Industry Jobs Plan in Part 5 of the bill is just one of a number of ways that the authority can do this. I'd also like to note and point out that this government has already, for people who are looking to retrain, change their skills, shift from industry to industry, this government has already implemented a number of supports for people who are looking to change their work, including the work that we've done through Workforce Australia, through new energy apprenticeships and the comprehensive fee-free TAFE programs that we've outlined. We also note that with regards to some of the functions the members outlined, there are some parts of that work that do appropriately sit with other agencies, Mr Speaker, such as the Department for Climate Change, Energy, the Environment and Water, and I've addressed quite comprehensively the government's views on the composition of the board, so I won't add more there. Thank you, Speaker.
The question is the amendments be agreed to, and I give the call to member for Warringah.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Noting the Assistant Minister's comments, I just wanted for clarification in the aspect that you state that it is already included in the bill, the provision to provide plans or create boards in relation to those other areas. Could you confirm or identify the section of the bill that in fact provides that? Because in relation to jobs plans or employment plans, that is very clearly limited to Part 5, and then noting earlier comments in relation to the review provision in 12 months, it is limited only to that section, which is limited to and I state it indicates review into the operation of this part, and it's only that part, which is the operation of gas and coal-powered plants. And so my understanding is that is very limited, and so I have not identified that there is broader powers in the remaining sections of this bill. And I would further ask the Minister to confirm, can you confirm that currently only approximately 5,000 workers will be covered by the Energy Industry Jobs Plan, and that in fact over 100,000 coal and oil and gas workers are excluded from that jobs plan?
The question is the amendments be agreed to, give the call to the Assistant Minister.
Very briefly, Mr Speaker, I just refer the member to Section 16B, Section 16C, Section 16D and Section 16E.